Welcome to Real Talk, live as always on SABC 3 where the stage is yours. So today we're continuing with our conversation on dismissals and constructive dismissals that we started on Workers' Day. There were so many questions and WhatsApp voice notes that we couldn't get through all of them, and so we brought this back, and back is also our labor expert Natasha Moni to answer all your questions. We also extend the conversation to look at retrenchments. But before that, have you considered what would happen if you met your demise on your way home from work? Is your will in order? You want to keep watching for our discussion on wills and testaments later on. Now let's take some of your questions and WhatsApp voice notes on constructive dismissals and unfair dismissals. And like I said, we welcome back to the show friends of the show now, really. Natasha, thank you so much for your time once again.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me back.
So you said, obviously people got hold of you on Twitter and on Facebook, and for us as well. I think we started a bit of a snowball effect, and it just got bigger and bigger, and mostly people wanted to know about, unfair dismissals and constructive dismissals.
Yes.
So did you also find that people were asking you more questions about that?
I did, and what I was picking up is that there's this trend towards looking at what is going on at work and trying to see whether or not it fits into constructive dismissal. And this was not a constructive dismissal kind of dispute. What it was is a victimization, discrimination, harassment, which is much bigger. There were a couple of ladies who I really felt for, and we are going to try and see what we can do in terms of helping.
Okay.
One of the ladies that I did come across, her outlook was absolutely fantastic. She said that she wants to start this engagement with her company to show them that the culture of the company needed to change.
Nice.
And she was working very hard in order to change it.
Okay.
I just hope, because it's very difficult. I hope.
Brave.
Very brave. And I hope that it doesn't see her out of a job.
Yeah, I see, because then they'll age you out and age you out. Okay, so let's hit the first voice note from Lufuno Muloiwa. Let's hear you.
Hi, I would like to find out about how to deal with a senior manager who has no trust in his own team but plays the victim all the time, so much so that he goes around sabotaging other people and blaming or shifting the blame to his team members. Behind closed doors, he speaks ill of these people, but in front of them, he wants to be known in emails that he's doing his job, whereas he is not doing his job at all. How do we deal with that, especially from a top-level perspective? Thank you.
Okay, first things first. Lufuno sounds like he's at work behind his desk whilst he sends us that voice note, very cloak and dagger. I don't know, from what I gather from that, there's a senior management, obviously powerful position, and this person is basically blackening everyone's reputation and work reputation at work, and behind closed doors, that's what they're doing, but in front, acting like they're working, meanwhile quite useless from what I hear as well. Is that what you also got from that?
A little bit of that as well. Look, in terms of labor law, this doesn't come to the fore until such time as it goes external, or until such time as you want to complain about it. Then you use your grievance procedures. I think management need to be very careful, because your leadership style stays with you throughout. And you create a legacy. You can't do that in a team if you do not know how to be a team leader and how to work within that team. And if you're continuously blackening other people's names, I don't believe that employees are stupid. So it seems as if perhaps a more collective way of managing it. Perhaps everybody gets together and everybody says, look, these are our concerns. And try and see if you can turn it into something positive. It doesn't always mean that you have to lose your job in order to get your point of view across.
So basically, from a labor law side, you could only step in if there is a dismissal or something happens for them to call in an outside expertise on this. At the moment, this is an HR problem.
It's once again an HR problem, but it's also you have to employ some sort of emotional maturity, some sort of EQ on this. You know, this is your job, this is your livelihood, this is your career, all right? This is a setback. How are you going to deal with it?
And you know what you're saying about there has to be a collective effort. When senior managers or managers who are supposed to have leadership qualities are not skilled at the leadership qualities, they resort to divide and conquer.
They do.
So now it's difficult to collectively come together and, you know, kind of have a, for lack of a less harsh word, revolution against a manager when behind closed doors all they're doing is making sure that there's divisions amongst you. But you're very right, EQ needs to be practiced there. Let's go to Tebogo at Tebogo ZA. Let's get your voice note.
Hey Anele, my name is Lisite from Webstead. My mom is currently on a case of unfair dismissal. It's been months now. It started last year, November. She haven't been paid all this month. She's still waiting for a case. It's only on the 30th of May. She was dismissed and she has never had a written warning. Over 21 years of her service to the company, she has never had a written warning. None of the right procedures of dismissal have been followed. What are her chances of winning the case, and why did they stop her from getting her salary?
21 years.
21 years is a lifetime.
Yeah.
It's a marriage.
Yes.
And this
child.
Yes, this has been a divorce, and
Yeah.
I can understand from that this is, you know, very painful.
Before you answer that, I mean, now that we're on the years, does the fact that you've been there for 21 years kind of immediately, without hearing what has happened, kind of entitle you to some sort of settlement?
No, it doesn't. And sometimes I find, especially those employers who, for instance, are going on retrenchment,
Yeah.
and doing a retrenchment exercise, sometimes they try and find the back door when they don't have enough money to pay those people who are long-standing.
Yes.
So yes, it's very difficult. She doesn't say what it is she was dismissed for. So, you know, there are best case scenarios and worst case scenarios. She does say that procedurally, they don't think that it was correct.
Yeah.
Now, remember, last week we spoke about substantive fairness and procedural fairness.
Yes.
So procedural fairness is really the way the disciplinary inquiry was conducted, and the substantive fairness is the reason for your dismissal. You can go on both, or at the CCMA. The CCMA is a process that does take long, and that's why be very serious at conciliation. Conciliation has to come after 30 days, and it's an attempt by the CCMA to try and resolve the issues. Where the length and the duration and the delay come in is when you have to go to arbitration. I always insist, as a commissioner, I always insist on a pre-arbitration minute.
Yes.
As a practitioner, I do that as well.
What does that mean, pre-arbitration minute?
A pre-arbitration minute is a set of rules. It's Rule 21 of the CCMA rules.
Yes.
And basically it says, what are the facts that are common cause? What are the facts that are in dispute? What are you asking of the CCMA or the bargaining council? What is it that you're going to prove? What is it that they're going to prove?
Aha, so we all know on which course we're going on.
We're all on the same page. Also, you know, you tend as one side of the party to only know one side of the story. And you think that the commissioner is with you. Sometimes the commissioner is not with you. Sometimes you're leaving the commissioner behind. Pre-arbitration minute is certainly going to assist you in stopping the delay.
But the mom does have grounds to take this through to the CCMA, regardless of what the dismissal was.
I don't particularly take disputes on until unless I'm 99% sure.
Yeah.
All right. But if you believe that procedurally you have a good case, take it on. Take it on.
And I don't know if you touched on this last time, but knowing my curiosity, I probably did ask it. Do you get paid whilst the case at the CCMA is continuing?
Thank you very much, because I wanted to bring that up. No, you don't. Once you're dismissed, you're dismissed. And sometimes you dismiss summarily, which means you don't even get notice.
But then let's say the CCMA then rules in favor of you, then do I get back pay for all the months that I spent not getting paid unfairly because of you?
Now that is what you asked last time round.
Yeah.
And my answer to this is still the same, thank goodness. Okay. If it is retrospective reinstatement
Yeah.
or reemployment, then you get back pay.
Okay.
That's if you have proved that substantively the
Yeah.
dismissal was unfair. If you only prove that procedurally the dismissal was unfair, then ask for compensation.
Okay, one more voice note before we go to an ad break. Please roll it.
Hi, Anele. Does CCMA also protect the foreigners who are working in South Africa, or is it only for South African citizens? Either they could be working legally or illegally. Illegally, I mean there are employees out here who need people of certain skills, and there's shortage of them here in South Africa, and the foreigners come here in South Africa to work with the skills that they have, and they decide to employ them illegally without proper documentation, and they do that with the hope of not getting them paid well, as they deserve, as they should be paid.
Okay, I'm going to take an ad break. Have a think about that, and then when we come back, we're going to answer the question. There was, do foreigners, have the right to take their employers to the CCMA, whether they are in the country legally and illegally? So that's the first voice note we're going to discuss as soon as we come back. Stay with us. And we're back. So life has many unexpected turns, and one of them is losing a job. And it's sometimes not even your fault. Nearly 60,000 people have been retrenched over the past year. And our labor laws allow companies to retrench employees due to economic and business conditions, provided that the employer follows the correct consultative procedure and the dismissals are based on fair and justifiable reasons. What are the reasons for termination? Is there an option for an alternative role within the company for you? Is there a possibility of re-employment at a later stage? These are questions that we're going to answer right now. We had a WhatsApp voice note from you regarding the CCMA. We've got our labor law expert in here, Natasha Moni. Let's hear that voice note again, please.
Hi, Anele. Does CCMA also protect the foreigners who are working in South Africa, or is it only for South African citizens? Either they could be working legally or illegally. Illegally, I mean there are employees out here who need people of certain skills, and there's shortage of them here in South Africa, and the foreigners come here in South Africa to work with the skills that they have, and they decide to employ them illegally without proper documentation, and they do that with the hope of not getting them paid well, as they deserve, as they should be paid.
Right.
The short answer to that is yes, absolutely. Our Constitution protects everybody. Whether you are legally here on a permit or whether you're illegally working. Our Labour Relations Act even protects prostitutes.
Okay.
All right. So if you are working for somebody, be it illegal or legal, be it with a permit or no permit, and you believe that you've been unfairly dismissed, or you believe that there's an unfair labour practice, you are entitled to go to the CCMA and declare a dispute.
That is amazing.
That is amazing.
Even if you're selling dwellums.
Dwellums?
Drugs.
Look, I wouldn't try it personally. And I suppose it would have to be considered.
Look, it would be one hell of a hearing.
Depends if they share the dwellings.
I can just imagine that scene. Okay, we got this on email.
Yes.
To Real Talk. It says, hi, Anele, I work for a law firm, and I was told by my employer when I took the job that I'll be entitled to maternity benefits, and 3 months into the job, I fell pregnant. Not only is she refusing me paid maternity leave, she does not want me to stay at home for the full months of maternity leave. Now she's finding all excuses to try and dismiss, and says that she and I are not working together, not working well together. Sorry, I'm not sure what to do. Regards, Melody.
All right. Well, Melody needs to understand that the law is on her side. And I'm very, we need to protect people, mothers who are having children.
Yeah.
And yes, hormones are running rampant. And yes, there might be a legitimate reason as to why your boss is saying we're not getting along. I believe it's probably hormones.
Yeah.
But you are entitled to maternity leave. What you're not entitled to is paid maternity leave.
Yes.
That you have to claim from the UIF.
Yes. Okay.
I've done it. It's an easy process to do.
Okay. But now, some companies state that, yes, you are here and we've hired you, but you may not, if you fall pregnant within the first year, is that when they say, we're not going to pay you for maternity leave, are they allowed to dismiss you?
They're not allowed to dismiss you at all, and that would fall under discrimination.
Okay.
And your compensation would be up to 2 years compensation, even if you've started working there like Melody has for a few months.
Oh.
So they're absolutely not allowed to dismiss you.
You're very right when you say the law is on your side, actually.
It is on your side.
It's just a case of knowing people like you and knowing exactly which avenues, to follow on. Let's go quickly to retrenchments, right?
Yes.
What is the difference between unfair dismissal and retrenchment as we discussed last week?
Right, remember retrenchment is your no-fault dismissal.
Yeah.
So your employer has to do everything that they can in order to ensure that there are alternatives, in order to ensure that they have mitigated your risk.
Oh, so like they were saying, is there another position that you could have done in the company?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And the employer has to be open to the alternatives that you bring to them.
Yes.
So if you say, well, hey, you've got those fancy box tickets at Loftus or at Ellis Park.
Yeah.
I think you should get rid of them. You have to seriously look at that.
Yeah.
That would hurt.
Yeah.
Most men, but you have to seriously look at it.
Okay, let's go through some WhatsApp voice notes we got regarding unfair dismissal, retrenchment, and all of that.
Hi, Anele. It's David here. I started working for this company last year in April. And then this year I was retrenched because the department that we were working under didn't pay our boss. So is it fair for our boss to give us package and tell us that the department didn't pay him, so he cannot keep us?
I'm sorry to say
That it is fair.
I wouldn't say that it's fair, because remember that fairness has two components to it.
Yes.
But once you have not been paid, it falls under financial reasons as to why you're contemplating dismissals. Then you have to go through the process. And the process is to try and negotiate and consult with your employees in a joint consensus-seeking way in order to find any possibility of saving their jobs. Now, David has worked for the company for a year. The severance package that David would get would be 1 week per completed year of service. So I have a tip for all people who are facing the possibility of retrenchment. Volunteer your retrenchment if you believe that you may be retrenched. The worst possible thing that they can do to you is say, no, you are not identified as the person that we are going to retrench. The best thing that can happen to you is a sweetener in terms of your severance package.
So if you volunteer, you get more money?
Yes, because you're saying, I offer my retrenchment.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, you should really come here every day. Next voice note, please, quickly.
Hi, ladies. Is it allowed to sign or to fill in an annual leave if there was a strike? You woke up in the morning and you couldn't get to work because of some certain protest, and you were asked to sign an annual leave. Is it according to labor law, or is it according to the company rules that you need to fill in an annual leave, or is there a special leave that you need to fill? Thank you.
Oh, that sounds dodgy.
I was going to say, you know the answer to that.
No, I don't.
don't?
I just feel like it sounds dodgy. No, that's not allowed.
It sounds so dodgy.
No, guys, surely not.
Look, the fact that you can't come to work is through no fault of your own.
Yes.
And again, we're talking about EQ here. Not only are employees to have EQ, but so is the employer.
Yeah.
You cannot force someone to take annual leave. You cannot. If there was an impossibility of her getting to work, there has to be some way of sorting this out.
Yeah, and the beauty of strikes and protests is that they covered in the news. You can see what's happening. I mean, there was a bus strike now for the past, week and a half. Everyone knew about that. There's no ways, your people who work for you should be the ones suffering with their annual leave.
And this is human capital.
Yes.
Anele, you should be thanking them for wanting to come to work.
Yeah.
For trying their best to come to work.
Yeah.
And for me, again, this is the law. Again, is on the employee's side. But really, if you want to have a relationship with somebody, your 21-year relationship, please let's have a relationship. Let's negotiate. Let's consult. Let's actually have some sort of mature dialogue around the difficulties that you have at work.
All right, I know they're going to tell me we're out of time, but I'm going to take one more voice note because really this is all about you at home.
Okay.
Let's roll it.
Find out. I was recently in an accident and I've been working for this place for, let's say, it's been 2 months. And then the boss, the owner, told me that he's not going to pay me for the 3 weeks that I've been off while I was recovering from hospital. I wanted to know, is it allowed to do such by law?
Can I take a guess at this one?
Yes.
It depends what your contract says. Are you a freelancer or are you a permanent employee?
No.
Oh.
So what happens is the Basic Conditions of Employment Act will tell you that there are a certain amount of days that you get when you are sick. However, the first 4 months that you work, it's 1 day for every 26 days you've worked.
So you amass a day for every 26 you work. So
otherwise, you amass 6 weeks over a 3-year cycle. So unfortunately, no, he doesn't need to pay you, but your boss kept your job.
Yes.
Be thankful for that.
Okay.
There's always UIF, there's workman's compensation. There are other things that you can try and see in order to amass the shortfall by not working for those 3 weeks.
Okay, on that note, thank you very much. Really, we could speak to you forever.
I could speak to you forever. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Always a pleasure chatting to our fab lawyer, Natasha Mani. We'll invite her back again on the show to discuss more labor matters for you. Now, according to experts, a sound financial plan, which includes a retrenchment policy, can protect you from the implications of losing your source of income. What about finances after your death? What happens to your life insurance, your investments, when you die? Will they be passed on to your loved ones, as you would want? An uncomfortable topic to think about, but one that needs to be considered nonetheless, especially if there are dependents involved. After the break, we discuss the important parts of financial planning, your last will and testament, and how to set up an estate. This is going to be a fascinating discussion. Stay with us. Welcome back. So planning for life after death is scary and taboo for some people. As uncomfortable as it is important to create a plan that provides for the people that you will leave behind, right? It is important to get your finances in order, and most importantly, it is important to have a will. And I know this. The problem with thinking about a will is that you think you're going to write your will and then you're going to die tomorrow. It's like you're willing death to come to you.
I know, and I think that is the point with a lot of African cultures. However, Anele, the day you die, you trigger a number of events.
Yeah.
And these events will have a significant impact on your dependents.
Yeah.
The first event which is triggered the day you die is that SARS deemed that you were about to file your annual return for that year. So immediately your annual return becomes due.
Yeah.
Second problem which can arise is that if you have accumulated a lot of wealth and were not filing your annual returns previously, SARS can also trigger a tax audit on you post-death to see all the taxes you've owed for the number of years to explain all the sudden wealth they discover. third event that's triggered when you die is that all the children who were unknown become known, because suddenly in the eyes of the law, they have right to part of your estate. African culture, all the wives that you might have hidden, that rural wife who you thought was parked safely, can reappear. So all this happens, and then you need to have something that informs what's going to happen with your estate. And that's the main thing. If you do not have a will, it goes into interstate succession problems.
Okay, so Gerald is a friend of the show. He's always been here. Roy, we welcome you for the first time.
Thank you.
You are a lawyer, am I right in saying that?
Yes.
And your expertise is obviously then dealing with last wills and testaments.
Correct.
Please, can you explain to me, what is an estate?
An estate comprises movable and even immovable assets.
Yeah.
A watch, a cow, a house, anything that you own.
So what's then the difference between, and I also, at any point in time, you can say to me, Anele, you watch too many movies. Because you must remember, all the expertise I have about wills comes from movies. So what's the difference between a last will and a living will?
A last will is a document you write to give your assets, bequeath your estate to your heirs, to anyone you nominate. It doesn't have to be your children. You can exclude. You have freedom of testation. A living will is to give a direction to your doctor to say, I don't want to be on these systems, switch off the plug and allow me to die.
Oh, so that is a will that you are aware that you're going to die. So basically, this is your last say before you check out.
You don't know you're going to die. Some people are proactive about it.
Yeah.
Some people, it's an admission of mortality to execute a will, so they avoid it at all costs. But sensible people, especially because of the impermanence of life, have a will, because otherwise winding up the estate without a will is fraught with difficulties. And sensible people, especially living in a big city where you can be run over by the proverbial bus, and you're maimed or you're incapacitated permanently, you want to give a direction. So you appoint somebody, typically a wife or a family member, or both, and you say to them, I indemnify the doctor. If I tell them, because I'm acting under an authority, to switch off the life support system, the doctor won't do it because their Hippocratic obligation is to sustain life. And we're saying there's no, it's not worth living anymore. Let's switch off that plug.
So what must I consider when I am consulting with somebody to set up my will as well as my estate?
Well, essentially, everyone needs to have a will, especially if you have children, Anele, because your assets is really not the things like tables and chairs and cows. Your real asset in life is your heirs, the people you leave behind. So anyone with a child has no excuse not to have a will, because the first instruction will be who is going to look after your children. And your will gives that kind of direction in terms of who's going to be a guardian. And by law, you nominate a guardian. Also important, Anele, is that when you nominate a guardian, tell them, because unfortunately, children are not death day presents. People have to make a decision that they're willing to look after your children. Plus, if you are going to will other people to look after your children, give provision. And that's where the financial planning comes in. Have that life policy. Remember, I spoke about the events that are triggered when you die.
Yes.
SARS only take cash. SARS don't take tables, they don't take chairs, they don't take cars and houses, no. They deal in cash. So your estate, when you die, needs to have this thing they call liquidity, which is cash. If you do not have cash to pay your back taxes or your estate duty, 20% of what you're worth, Anele, the day you die, it's going there. So essentially, all these things will require liquidity. If you don't have liquidity when you die, they're going to sell assets. So it's a planning process.
So no one will be liable for your SARS bill, though?
No, your estate is liable to your SARS bill, but if your SARS bill finishes your estate, who's
then
going to
you've
look
left
after your
nothing
children?
for your children. Here's wills. Are they allowed? Are they a secret? Can they be known before I die? What my will says?
I think, you know, the people close and around you should know you have a will. You don't necessarily have to disclose the contents. So you have this person called an executor. An executor is somebody who executes, does the will.
Yeah.
So normally it's a family member as well as someone who's professionally competent to deal with your will. So that's either an attorney, a lawyer, or a financial planning expert, because somebody has to actually go through, there are a lot of things you have to discuss, usufructs, previous inheritances.
Yeah.
There's lots of legal terms and legal obstacles which need to be dealt with, so you need someone professionally competent. Now, one of the things I'd like the viewers to note is that when you are told there's a free will, there's no such thing as a free lunch when you're alive, and there's no free will when you die. Because often when you write that free will, what you're doing is you're nominating whoever is saying it's free as your executor. And that means they're entitled to an executor's fee of up to 3.99% of your estate. So you're basically saying 4% of what I'm worth, I'm giving it to you because you gave me a free will.
So could I have more than one executor?
You can have as many as you like.
Really?
Yeah, typically a dad has 4 kids. He can nominate them all. It causes confusion because if they don't have the skills, then they'll approach someone who does have those skills, whether it's a lawyer, accountant, or trust company. But yes, you can have as many as you like.
I was reading up on wills, and one of the phrases that you know that kind of spoke to me was, in life, you know, and it's the good times, you know, you might not write a will because you believe that your children get along, right, Roy? You're like, oh, they get along. When I die, they'll sort themselves out. What's the danger in doing that?
Well, children, when it comes to money, will never get along. They'll always be fighting, especially if one gets more than the other.
Yeah.
So, but you know, you can be unhappy with a child, and you can punish him or her by not leaving anything. You know, when you've got huge estates, it's going to be a challenge. They're going to say, I was of unsound mind. How could I leave me out of the will when there are billions involved?
Yeah.
But, you know, begs the question, if it's a small estate and you get left out, do you have the money to go to court to challenge the will?
Fight it.
Yeah.
All right, we'll hold it there. We're taking your questions and comments on wills and estates. Are you considering a will but not sure how? Or maybe you think that you don't have any assets, so why bother writing one up? Are you confused with all the legal requirements? We want to hear from you, okay? We've got the experts here. Use them. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Listen, we're not being dramatic, but not leaving a will and testament could have devastating consequences for the family that you leave behind. Have you considered what will happen if you meet your demise on the way from work one evening? Would your family know where your will is kept? Would they know where your assets are held? Having a will allows you to specify exactly how you wish to distribute your assets to your selected beneficiaries following your death. I'm still in conversation with financial planner Gerald Mwandiambira, as well as wills and estate lawyer Roy Bregman, who's also the director at Bregman Moodley Attorneys. Thank you for your time, gentlemen. Now, before we went to an ad break, we're talking about the fact that your executor?
Yeah, executor.
Executor.
Yeah.
Executor is entitled to 3.99%.
Yeah, that's with the old VAT, yeah.
Yes, of then executing your will, right? Now, let's talk about the free wills, where I can go to a stationery shop and buy it. Is that dangerous? Why is it dangerous? If I can buy it, surely it's legal and it's fine.
Okay, look, a will has got a number of legal requirements for it to be enforced. And one of them means you're mentally competent, you're over 16, there's 2 witnesses, your witnesses cannot be beneficiaries in the will, and a number of things need to be met. So yes, in theory, you can write your will on a piece of tissue paper as you make your last breath. However, it makes it open to being challenged if you don't meet the legal requirements for the will to stand. That's why people then end up consulting attorneys and lawyers, because they need to have an airtight will. And that's one of the issues. The thing about a will is that it's good for you to have one. Many good wills cannot be challenged easily. However, it's even worse to die without the will. Because when you die without the will, it goes to the Master of the High Court, and that's a little building in Joburg where there's loads of people, and it is challenging because it takes a long time for your estate to be wound down. Another event that's triggered the day you die is that all your debtors come up. And if you don't have a will which actually says, these are my debtors, I could come up and say, Anele owes me 2 million rand.
Whereas I don't, and it's just a lie.
Well, your family will find it very difficult to prove that you don't.
Yeah.
So that's another reason. So a will is not only about assets and children, it's also about your debts, because what often happens is that the day you die, everybody who you owe money will know.
So, Roy, the day I die, apparently my accounts are frozen. Is that true?
Well, the bank won't know about it until somebody notifies them, so the account will operate.
Yes.
But you have 2 weeks in which to report an estate. Nobody ever does it. That's the theory in terms of the Administration of Deceased Estates Act. But yes, you need to have some financial plan in place. So that, I'll give you an example. My wife's late grandfather was quite a wealthy man. He didn't provide adequately. They had to sell his house, and his wife had to go and move in with her daughter because there wasn't enough money to pay the estate duty. So you can imagine the first 3.5 million is exempt, but everything over that attracts 20% death duties. So you don't have to be very rich to become very poor if you don't provide.
So speaking of, you know, him being a wealthy man, let's talk about somebody who doesn't have assets.
Yes.
Many people, and I know many of you are thinking this right now, you're like, I have nothing, why must I write a will? What's the danger in that?
There's no real danger in not having a will, but if you've got kids and you've got some assets, you've got a pension fund, you've got something due to you.
Yeah.
What happens is the estate eventually gets wound up, and if your kids are under 18, if they're minors, the money goes to the Guardian's Fund. And the problem with that is you have to go, you're the mom typically.
Yeah.
You go cap in hand and you have to say to them, can you please give me 2,000 Rand this month or 5,000 Rand to feed and educate my children? That could never have been the intention of the dad who's earned this pension money. That's why the will say, I leave everything to my wife, for example, and her failing, if she dies before me or with me, it goes to my kids. And you create a trust, testamentary trust within the will, and you appoint guardians to look after the children. But it makes a lot of sense, whether you got money or not, to have a will.
Okay, let's go to a voice note and then you guys can answer it. Please roll it for me.
Hi guys. I just want to know, Uguti, if you have a child with someone who's married, will your child have much title as much as the child that they are in marriage, or what?
That is a very good question.
Simple answer to that is yes. If they are your child, they are financial dependent. On your death, they can claim. So they just need to prove through DNA or whatever that they are your child. Remember, one of the events I said is triggered is that children pop up. So your child, every child you've had in your life has an obligation, has a right to that.
Even if the father did not recognize them in life, in death, they are entitled to go and sue the estate for their money.
Definitely. The law will protect that financial dependent, and they will have a right and they can claim from that estate.
Can they back claim?
Well, it's not black claiming. They look at what the estate is worth and how much would you be needing to take that child to adulthood. The law looks at it simply from those lenses. So it's important that even if you know you've got a child your wife doesn't know about, put them in your will. Because the day it comes up, firstly, your wife can't shout at you much because
you did.
You know, you can't do anything about it. But fully disclose everything in your will, because that is a powerful document which will speak to that. Another important thing, Anele, is that if you have a spouse, have a will with your spouse, because these days you're driving to work together.
And then you both die.
And then something can happen. So you need to have a scenario where who are the guardians in the event of both of us leaving this earth at the same time.
Listen, we're going to take a very quick break. We want to hear from you, especially if you have a DIY will, because when we return, we look at the pitfalls and what could go wrong with a DIY will. We'll be right back. Whilst many people understand the need to have a will, you will be surprised that very few actually have one in place. According to the latest figures released by the Masters of the Court, over 70% of South Africans' working population do not have wills. That means many workers die in estate and risk their assets and pensions and life policies payouts being inherited by the wrong people. We continue with this conversation on wills and testaments, looking at the pitfalls that could possibly, end up in things going haywire for you. Roy, you were saying something that a child who was written out of a will could contest it and get back in the will.
Well, if it's a minor child and has a need to be educated, he or she can claim maintenance against the estate, even though he may not have been mentioned in the will. He's entitled to claim from the dad or the mom, just like any other child who needs to be supported. So, as we said before, it's important be upfront and mention all the wills, otherwise, all the kids, otherwise they come out of the woodwork. But yes, kids are entitled to claim.
And how often would you say a person must revise their will?
Every time there's a changed circumstance, you have another child, you buy another property, because your intentions will change. Sometimes it's unfortunate. You have a fallout with a child, so then you leave him out, then you have another argument and you leave the first one out. You've got to be mature. I think we mentioned about EQ before. And also the other thing is you can't rule from the grave. Some people leave things in the will that are conditional. You can only inherit if you are Christian, or if you are not homosexual, or all these unreasonable conditions. All these provisions can be struck out.
Okay, I like that. Voice note, please, last one.
Hi, Anele. I'd like to know, where does the money that gets paid to the Guardians Fund for the children come from? Because in 1999, our dad passed away. We were 3 children under the age of 18, 2 from my mom, 1 an illegitimate child. He got a share, but my sister and I didn't. Now, when we try to trace the funds, we don't know who to ask, pension fund or the employer. Thank you.
Gerald.
Guardians Fund really is that situation. There was no will, and whatever was in the estate, be it a life policy which was not paid to a beneficiary, it will go automatically into the estate, or the residue of the estate, it's paid into the Guardians Fund. So there should be an audit trail of how much went into the Guardians Fund, and it should be clear. The reason why the voice note caller might not have received anything with their sister is possibly that they were adults. Because remember, financial dependency is the main rule which applies when you're talking children. So once you're an adult, you're not a financial dependent as much as a child.
Could you contest it though, even though you're an adult?
Well, it's very difficult to contest against a child who has a financial need for education and to survive. So normally the court will usually support the child because the child hasn't got a voice for themselves. However, yes, it gets messy. Once you get into that territory where it's not laid out fairly, you can't write an unfair will, which is against the rules or against the law, because it will be challenged in court.
But they should be able to get that information, though. I just feel like they left in the dark, the money's disappeared, and they didn't get anything.
Can I just add?
Please.
So I die, and I don't tell my employer who my kids are, who my family is. What is the employer supposed to do with that money? They don't know who to pay it to. They can't identify any beneficiary. They put it into the Guardians Fund. If you die intestate, it's one of the pitfalls, and you haven't mentioned, nobody knows who the beneficiaries are, that's where the money ends up. Periodically, if you read the Government Gazette, and people make money from this, they say, estate late so-and-so, there's $1 million due. If you think you have a claim against the estate, lodge it. So there are people who professionally look for and identify those heirs and say to them, listen, give me a percentage and there's some money waiting for you. It's a whole business.
It's an entire business. I told you it was going to be a fascinating conversation. Gerald, thank you so much again for your time. Our financial guru in the show, and our first timer here, Roy, thank you so much for your time as well.
Welcome.
Look, we all work hard for our money, but we should all make sure that it goes to the people that we want it to go to. Once again, thanks to our guest, Gerald Mondiambira, as well as Roy Brakeman from his law firm, Brakeman and Moodley, right? Brakeman Moodley attorneys. This was indeed valuable information. That's it from our side. Thank you so much for watching. I know it was a lot of information, but I know it's information that you need. We are back on your screen tomorrow at 6 p.m. right here on SABC 3. Our favorite Isidingo is up next. Don't go anywhere.